So one of the questions that I get asked most frequently is, can you just shave your mustache? And the other question that I get asked most frequently is, should I be buying LED continuous lights or should I be buying strobes and flashes? So in this video, I want to go over the pros and cons of each, show you why certain things are better for certain situations, and why the final answer isn't really as simple as it sounds. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sergio and I'm a commercial photographer here in Victoria, BC. If you're new here, I do videos mostly on the business of photography, but today we're going to be talking about a bit of the technical side of lighting and how that affects your final shot. As someone who learned how to shoot like 10, 15 years ago, I'm definitely someone who has learned on flash, so I do have some biases. But nowadays, with everyone asking for video, and it becomes like a blurred line between what it is that you actually need. A lot of the lights nowadays are getting so much stronger and so much more powerful that it makes it possible to start using some of these LEDs. So we're going to be talking about the function, we're going to talk about the versatility, we're going to talk about the build quality, and we're also going to talk about the overall use cases for all of these types of lights. So full disclosure, Jean did send me these two lights to play around with, but they didn't ask me to review the video before I upload it, and I was able to say whatever it is that I want. So if I'm not going to actually use these lights and I'm going to spend my own hard-earned money on them, then I won't tell you to spend your hard-earned money on them as well. I think just mentioning their name in this video is enough of a commercial for them. However, innovation of how much brighter, smaller, and lighter these things are getting, that they start to become a really viable counterpart to flashes. So one thing I will say about these two lights that Jayun sent me over here, they aren't modifiable, so to speak. They're not very versatile other than what you see is what you get. A lot of the reasons for picking a flash or picking an LED, which we'll dive into a little bit later, unless you're always shooting the exact same thing, you're gonna want to vary that light source. And by not being able to modify your light sources, you might as well be using a lamp. So yeah, sure, there is a mini Bowens, and I do believe there is a mini to a regular Bowens adapter, but the fact that these aperture lights have that Bowens light built in, or sorry, the Bowens modifier built in, just makes it that much easier to constantly be modifying your lights. You can put a strip box, you can put an umbrella, you can put a reflector, you can constantly be changing, and it doesn't matter because you just got an LED on board and you're just trying to create as much light as possible. What I don't like about these ones over here, and especially something like a stick like this, you just have no versatility when it comes to wanting to modify that light. And I know if you're first starting out, you're like, I don't need to modify a light, I just need a light. It's better than not having a light. Sure, I'll give you that. But I do think it's very limiting to spend this much money on something that you can't use for multiple different use cases. All right, so what are these use cases, right? Like there's a million different reasons to buy a bunch of different lights, but the most important thing is how does it look? Does it get you the shot that you want to get? And we're gonna jump into that right away. So we've got a little scene set up over here. My type of work is gonna be different than your type of work. It's gonna be different than your neighbor's type of work. So just focusing on what it is that you like to shoot will help you further narrow down what it is that you need. I've always shot with flashes because I like having the extra power that those tiny little lights will give me. And I'll give you an example of how that works. So right now, we've got a cute little scene that's set up over here. I'm just gonna take a quick shot, show you what it is that we've got. There we go. So first shot is gonna be completely black, and that is how I like to light my scenes, because by having a completely black frame, it allows me to just neutralize all of the reflections or all of the light that's actually happening in the scene, the natural or the available light that we have. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna paint in our light with our flash or with our LEDs and see how much of it we can actually do. So let's turn on the flash first to go, kind of like our control group, just to show exactly what it is that we're actually gonna get. If I take the same shot as we just took with the flash, boom, all right, that flash is at 1/8 power, so that means I can go all the way, let's say full power. Now I'm getting a completely overexposed scene. What I can do, maybe bring it down to like f22, see if we get a little bit more accurate. Boom. All right, so if we look at our histogram now, we can see that the shot is a little bit more evenly exposed. I don't care about the diffraction or anything like that, but just that we have a nice evenly lit shot. That means I can go all the way to f22 in this environment and still be able to create with my little AD200 strobes. You can get the 600 watt lights, and I do use the 600 watt lights when I'm fighting with midday sun. But if you're ever in a controlled environment like this basement with some fluorescent lights, or maybe even just like a side window or things like that, These flashes will be more than enough to crush all of the natural light or the ambient light that you've got. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that difference between the two. Let's grab this 60 watt light over here. And we're going to plug it in right in front. And we're going to try to take the exact same shot. I will say this is only a 60 watt light and this is a 200 watt strobe. So let's look at that difference between the light output of the two. So if I crank this to 100, and I take the very same shot and I don't change my settings, look, oh, well, let's turn off the flash. My bad. Look at that. It's a completely black frame because there is nowhere near enough light that comes out of this 60 watt strobe compared to this 200 watt strobe. If you had an LED that was as bright as how bright that strobe just fired, it's really annoying and it really hurts, let's say, your model's eyes, or it might melt the food that you've got. This is only at 60 watts and it's already too bright in the corner of my eyes, especially for my pale blue eyes. Whereas with a strobe like this, you can kind of get away with just hit, 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 and it's never as bright in your subject's face, it's never as annoying in your subject's face as a continuous light. So keep that in mind if you're working with people. So what is the actual exposure that we can use? Let's say I bring this all the way down to 2.8, take the same shot. Now we're starting to get a little bit closer to a properly exposed image. However, if I turn off this light and I take the exact same shot with these settings, you can see I'm still getting quite a bit of ambient light and natural light that's actually affecting our final shot. And I don't want that, at least in the type of work that I do. So when it comes to creating a scene that doesn't actually exist yet, a smaller LED, and obviously you can get a 300 or a 600 watt LED, but a smaller one will have a much harder time actually exposing the scene if you're trying to crush all the natural light. So next up, let's use this 100 watt light that Jayun sent me, and we're going to put it up against the Aputure Amaran 60D that I paid for with my own money. So let's see the difference between the two. All right, so I've taken off the little diffusion dome, but I've got, whoa, okay. That was scary. Ooh, that's bright. So now if I take the shot with the exact same settings, we'll see that this 100 watt light is a lot brighter than that 60 watt cob light. And I will say it's probably like 3 or 4 times brighter right now, which means we can crush a little bit more of that ambient light. So instead of shooting at 2.8, let's go down to f4, take the exact same shot, see if we still get a good amount of life. We can even go a bit further, I think. Let's go to 5.6. All right, that looks like pretty similar to the 60 watt light, so it looks like we've got as much as 2 extra stops of light with that little 100 watt, which is pretty good considering the fact that they are very much the same size and weight. They just have a slightly different form factor, but they're pretty much the same size. So if we take this shot without the light, if we turn off the light now, we take the exact same shot, now we'll see that we're crushing the vast majority of our ambient light, but we still do get a little bit of that color cast, especially down here on the lighter colored material, like the beige stuff that's on the table. So be careful with that. I just set up the CF100. Right now we've got it at max power. I've got it set to 5600K to just kind of create a little bit of a neutrality amongst all 4 of these lights. And now if we take the same shot, we'll see that was with, oh, that's with the light on. Jesus. Okay. So we're really not getting a lot of light. So if we bring it down to 2.8, we're almost getting as much light as the cob. If I go to ISO 200, that's probably pretty similar to our original shot. Yeah. That looks pretty similar in terms of exposure. So I will say that we've got 1 stop less of light than the 60D. So I will say the CF100 over here has the least amount of light, then it'll be the Cobb 60D, then it's the CF100 in terms of light output. What you see is what you get. So instead of using as a key light, something like this would probably be much better used as a backlight. They sent me a little pop-up, like one of these things, but like this isn't doing anything. This is really only going to be taking away some light. And I don't know if you guys can notice, but over here, where there's these gaps in the Velcro, you're creating a bunch of light that now is going to leak out of there, and it's just not going to make a very, it won't make for a very nice looking light. This isn't giving me a whole lot of confidence in terms of softening the light. It's just too small. But the thing is, you can't really fit something much, much bigger than that on that tiny little light because of this tiny little mount. Keep that in mind. If you're only gonna buy a single light, which one do you buy? Well, you wanna buy at least something that's big enough and powerful enough to tackle your most intense situations. If you're often shooting at midday sun or at sunset backlit and you're trying to fill some light in the face, you're gonna need a pretty strong, powerful flash in order to do that, especially if you start throwing modifiers or some distance between the subject and the light. You're really gonna need some bigger, stronger flashes. But if you're just in a controlled environment like I am right now, and you're trying to light up a scene and you wanna actually see what you're seeing, then sometimes the LED is the better way to go. It's not always about just shooting with flash or shooting with the biggest, most powerful strobes and having all the Broncolor lights in your kit. It's about being able to just hit the job and tackle the job appropriately. You know, it's easy to look online and to look at on Instagram and some of these, you know, bigger YouTubers, and you're just like, man, how do you have like $200,000 worth of kit? It's because they're bringing 12 people in order to create the shot that they're actually creating. There are light stands that are worth more than every single light I own in this studio combined. I can pretty much guarantee the thing you need is not a ring light, so don't go out and buy one. But for most use cases, I think these small LEDs actually kind of play a pretty pivotal role in creating a final shot. My biggest gripe with these Zhiyun lights is the inability to modify them. And yeah, sure, the build quality is pretty plasticky and it's maybe not gonna last for 30 years. But at that price point, I don't need it to last for 30 years. Would I save my pennies and buy something that's maybe a little bit more expensive? Probably. I'd rather spend $1,000 on something that's gonna last me for 3 times as long as something that I'm gonna spend $300 on that might break. But it depends on how you use your lights. Depends how often you use them. Depends if you're throwing them from bag to bag. Do you fly a lot, or does TSA handling your lights at any point? Because if that's the use case that you have, then maybe investing in something like a light storm or something that's a little bit more heavy duty might be beneficial for you. But if you're just wasting extra money because you saw some YouTuber online that uses these fancy lights or whatever, then that's not gonna give you any service. You're gonna end up selling them on Marketplace like most people do anyway. You're having a $1,000, $2,000 paperweight that you're not actually gonna use when this tiny little cheap plasticky CX100 that fits in your hand and you can basically fit it in your pocket as long as you're not wearing, you know, girls' jeans that don't have pockets. You basically get away with a whole lot more stuff. It's better to have a light than to not have one. So if you're debating between this or that and this or that, if you've never shot with flash before and it's daunting to you and you don't want to shoot with flash, you just want to have a continuous LED, it'll do you more service to buy an LED and to get practice with it than it would to have a flash sit in your closet collecting dust because you're too scared to use it. Sure, my advice would be to actually try and practice and use that flash and make it work to your best ability. But if you're not going to be that person and you just want to have a quick little light to see the scene that you're trying to see, these things are actually pretty damn good. That CX100 has about 2 extra stops of light than the 60 watt, and this CF100 has about 1 stop less light than that 60 watt. So about 3 stops of difference between these two, the chip on board and this strip light, which this is also supposed to, this is already really hot, by the way. Ooh, okay. I don't know what else do they got. Oof, that one's annoying. Ooh, that one's also annoying. Ooh, funky. Yeah, like I don't know how very useful this is other than to be like a background in these YouTube videos, to be honest with you. It's just not my kind of use. It's just not something that I would find use in. But if you have use cases for a light like this, please let me know down in the comments. I'm not the photographer that shoots everything in the world, so if you can find something that you would shoot this with, let me know. In my opinion, if you're not in a super controlled environment, like I'm in a basement, and I still can't shoot past ISO 200 and at f2.8 with a 100 watt light. So it really isn't strong, at least in terms of camera speak. When you have it in your face and you're looking at it, it's like, yeah, it's pretty bright, but cameras are nowhere near as light sensitive as our eyes and as the brain is. So it really isn't a whole lot to play with. In my mind, a little gimmicky. However, the smaller light, the smaller chip on board CX100 actually has usable qualities. I think the strength that this light gives you is pretty good, and it is very small and very easy to pack up. I'm a little scared to pack it too tightly because of how exposed everything is, and It just doesn't give me the whole much of confidence. And having the battery on the side, like I get it. It kind of looks like a camera and it's got similar usability as a camera, I guess. But I don't like that it's like weighted weirdly. Like it's, if this is where you want to put it on a light stand, now it's like the weight is off. So it's a little awkward. But that's a very minor issue. It's got the standard mounting points at the bottom, which do work. The buttons are, not gonna lie, not that confidence inducing. There's no clicks, there's no steps, there's no confidence in knowing like, oh, okay, now it's at 80%, now it's at 100%. It also has a color temperature thing, but I just keep it always at 5600, and I just think of it as daylight. All my flashes have always been daylight, so I don't ever think about using colors in terms of LEDs. Mainly because I want to be able to control them myself. I want to actually know for sure. So if I have a daylight balanced light and I put a gel on it, that's easier that way. When it comes to functionality, when it comes to use cases, I will still give the point to the 8200 flashes or any kind of speedlight flash, strobe, thing like that. I'm more comfortable with a strobe, sure, and I might have my bias, but it's just so much more versatile. You can modify it, you can use it, maybe not midday sun at sunset or something like super, super, super bright, or having the world's biggest modifier that's 47 feet away from your model, then yeah, sure, you might need something even more powerful than these little guys. But usually, more often than not, this will be more than what you need for almost everything you're gonna encounter. I can't say the exact same thing about any of these LEDs. All three of these LEDs are not, in my opinion, to be used as a main light, but they make for excellent kickers, backgrounds, accent lights, things that you can hide behind a counter so you can just create a little bit of life. For those use cases, these are perfect. This is excellent for that kind of a use. Would I go and invest into 5 of these in order to create a light that's slightly stronger so that I can shoot the type of stuff that I like to shoot? Probably not. I would much rather spend a little bit more money on a bigger light. Now I know that Zhiyun also makes like a 500 watt light, so if you guys are watching, like, feel free to send me that too. I'll play with that as well. But for these smaller lights, I just don't think that the use case is good enough for a main light. If it's a main light that is adding ambiance, that is, you're just adding a key light and you're using the ambient or the natural light to have as your fill light. If that's your use case, then yeah, these things are excellent. They're perfect. You can add just a little bit of kick to your subject that's right in front of the video camera or something, and you want to shoot a little bit more like an enhanced reality instead of creating something that doesn't exist entirely, then yeah, these are perfect. These are great little use cases for that. They actually pack quite a bit of punch for how small, lightweight, and portable they are. But having a small little tiny kicker like this that can get me out of a rut in a certain situation, that might actually be useful. So something like this, as much as, yeah, it's not exactly the cheapest throwaway thing, but having a light versus not having a light is better. I wish this was a full Bowens mount, which would allow me the ability to actually modify this light so much more than I can. Obviously with this here, this is totally added, by the way. This is not from the company, but I added just a little way to put it on my light stand, but also this gives me an umbrella, so I could still use this in an umbrella, have a diffusion on it. It makes me look like an octabox, and I can pretty much put this in there. Battery life is, I wouldn't say impressive, but it's actually pretty good. It's not gonna die out unless you're doing a very extensive shoot where you know that, I doubt that that's gonna last. Just use your judgment. I haven't done a minute-by-minute comparison of how long these things last, but it's pretty good. I basically had them on. I used them as lights in my room or in my house just to see how long it would be on for a full power. And it was surprising every time. I'm not going to say it was exactly 4 hours and 27 minutes. Like, I don't remember exactly how long it was, but it was pretty impressive, more than I thought. A lot more than, let's say, running the modeling light on one of these things, which drains the battery in like 20 minutes. The build quality definitely does not give any kind of confidence. The buttons on the back suck. The on-off thing is like just annoying, but these like little things don't make you unable to create an image. They just make it a little bit less fun to use. It's still very useful. Still has the same ability to create as these guys. The Aperture 60D, if anything, has 2 stops less of light. Is that worth the Bowens mount? Is that worth the screen on the back so you can actually see what you're doing? That's on you to decide. For me, if I had to look between the two of these, I would probably lean still towards the Bowens mount, even though this wasn't out when I bought that 60D. That falls into comfort. That falls into preference because of how long I've been shooting. If you don't have a preference, or if you don't have like a bias towards one or the other, and you're just looking at them completely honestly and blankly, I wouldn't see a difference. You'd get used to whatever it is that you have, and then the more you get used to that thing, the more you're like, I don't like those things. So your mileage may and probably will vary. So points for functionality in terms of light output will go to the flash, but honorable mention does go to this CX100. Quite a bit brighter than I expected, even though it's only a 100-watt light, but it is quite bright. I did notice that these have a slightly more hotspot look than the 60D, but that 60D is still quite a bit of a hotspot as well. It's not a huge difference. It can be modified in order to not have that hotspot. When it comes to special features and nice to haves, yeah, sure, this has quite a few different modes in order to create certain things like a light painting or something that looks a little bit different, or just adding an accent to the background or something like that, or like I'm currently doing. It has those use cases, so special point to that. But I think with the right amount of modifiers and gels and other things, you can probably create the vast majority of these effects, unless you're strictly shooting video, with a flash. So maybe bonus point to this one, but not really. When it comes to build quality, now all four of these lights are made entirely of plastic, but I will say that the flash, the 200s, have a little bit more ruggedness. They're a little bit more tight and compact together. It doesn't feel like it's hollow. It feels like it's a solid piece of hard plastic. This over here, I'll throw on some B-roll, but reminds me, yeah, of those Game Boys, because you can kind of like see through it, those little remote controls. And I just hate the weight distribution of this. I hate that like it's very one-sided, and it makes for an not so pleasant using experience. In terms of light output, which is the only thing that you really should, or it should be like the most important thing. The most important thing to me, not necessarily how bright a light can be, but the light output, the quality of that light. Is it intense? Is it spotty? Is it able to be modified? Is it gonna last? Those are things that are worth spending those extra couple bucks for. Now, I'm not saying you have those extra couple bucks for, and I will say that maybe buying a light is gonna be better than not having a light. But if you can wait 6 months, if you can wait another year, you can save up a few more coins, maybe you'll get more use case out of a slightly stronger light. It's not a very blanket, easy response, because depending on what you shoot is gonna affect which type of light that you need to use. Between buying this and the Amaran 60D, honestly, they're interchangeable. I think both of these have pros and cons that might lean you towards more one than the other. And if you're shooting as much photo as you are video, or if you're just learning flash and you want to keep going and understanding what the light is actually doing while you're using it, having an LED is pretty useful. It'll give you a lot more use cases than if you don't have one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if I missed out anything down in the comments. Maybe I can do a part 2 of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a couple days. Later.